Zamanın ruhu diyorlar ya, Zeitgeist. Zor zamanlarda herhalde hepimiz içe dönüyoruz. Zaten terim var biliyorsunuz, cocooning. Herkes kendi Fate Popcorn'un kendi kozasının içine dönmek istiyor. Biz de bu toplantıda daha çok değerler, işte sabah storytelling dinledik, duygular, çalışanlar, işte beynimiz, ruhumuz. Açılıştan itibaren Erol Bey'in başlattığı yol aslında kültürel miras. Şimdi son oturumlarda da benzer bir şey var ve konuşmacılarımız aslında birbirleriyle haberleşmeden bunu hazırladılar. İşin en güzel tarafı o senenin bir ruhu oluyor ve ortak payda da kendi ruhumuzu, kendimizi anlamak, çevreyi anlamak, insanları anlamak ve bütüncül bakmak. Nigel Hollis'in sunumunda da aynı şey var. Sharper vision depends on developing your mind's eye. Yani keskin bakış için bizim zihnimizi açmamız gerekiyor ve zihin gözümüzü, aslında gönül gözümüzü açmamız gerekiyor. Kantar Millward Brown'un Chief Global Analyst ve Global Brand Practice'inden sorumlu. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Nigel Hollis. A big round of applause, please. Energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, but as you can tell, my Turkish is limited to about 3 words, so the rest of my presentation is going to be in English. I'm delighted to be here again in Istanbul, and as you heard, the presentation I'm going to talk about is sharper vision requires developing your mind's eye. Because I have been in, and it's a scary thought, I have been in the research industry, the consumer insight industry, whatever you wish to call it, for over 30 years. That's probably before some of you were born. And it's actually one of the most exciting times to be working in our industry, because so much new is taking place. There are so many new data sources to be used, there are so many new techniques. Neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience are leading the way in terms of understanding how people's brains work and how we respond to the world around us. But I'm actually also challenged and concerned about many of the things that I see. Too often I think that we're becoming reliant on our new tools and our new techniques, and particularly on our algorithms, to identify what is important. And we actually need to bring it back to what's in our heads and what's in our hearts. So particularly developing our ability to intuit, to seek out what's behind the data, what's behind the conclusion from our algorithm, and understand what it really means for our customers and our consumers so that we can help to make their lives better and in the process to create value for our brands. Because of course that is why we're all here, is because we're here to help build brands and businesses. So my job for the last 30 years has been specialized in focusing on brands, media, and marketing communications. So you're going to see a theme running through my presentations, which tends to focus on those areas because they're the ones I'm most familiar with. So, what am I going to talk about today? Well, the topics I'm going to cover in the presentation are more than methodology. I think as researchers, we love to debate methodology. I've seen, people arguing as to whether we should be doing EEG versus this versus that. And at the end of the day, really what makes data useful is the interpretation, the understanding that we as human beings bring to it, and then what we do with it. So, 3 things that I think can help with that is knowing what we're looking for. One of the things that really, upsets me is when I see a data fishing trip. Where the analyst goes, let's ask this question, and this question, and this question, and this question, and this question, And then we'll see what we find. And maybe there'll be something interesting there. Well, that's not a very efficient way of going about research, and we can't afford to do that in this day and age. So one of the things that I have been very focused on is trying to make sure that when we ask questions, that we know that there is an actionable result that's likely to come out from them. The other thing is suspending our own viewpoint. I think we all probably work for pretty large companies where there are all sorts of protocols, there are all sorts of objectives. You know, we have our job description and there are certain objectives we need to hit if we're lucky enough to get a bonus at the end of the year. And we tend to get bound up in those numbers, the internal numbers of a company, and it tends to divorce us from the people who are buying our company's products and services. And so I think suspending our own viewpoint, and I'm not sure that this translates or is a Turkish phrase, but as the Brits would say, putting yourself in the shoes of your customer or your consumer is still hugely important. And then there's checking for blind spots. We're talking about sharper vision or clearer vision here at the conference. And one of the key things that, again, I think we see is that there are huge blind spots in what we assume customers and consumers can take away from our advertising, for instance, but also we tend to get lured by what I call convenience metrics, the things which are data that's easily available to us. So checking for blind spots is probably the most important thing we can do to make sure that the research that we conduct and interpret is useful. And then I'll finish with a few key takeaways. So more than methodology, we need to develop our mind's eye. And what do I mean by our mind's eye? It's the ability to look beyond the numbers, to understand what those numbers really mean for the human being that provided the data, whether that was in qualitative research or quantitative research. What was the real feeling, the real importance to that individual? I want to think about very quickly how important our vision is to us as human beings. If you think about the fact that we have two eyes, it's incredibly important to how we navigate the world around us. It gives us confidence that when we walk along, I'm not going to bump into the podium because I can see exactly where it is. I have better depth perception as a result of having two eyes. I can see more clearly in dim light. Yes, I can see you at the back of the audience there. There are many benefits that we have from having two eyes, but actually, it's what behind our eyes that is truly important. It's the way that our brain merges the information from these two data sources that is truly important. And for us as researchers, I think we could learn a lot from the way the human mind integrates data from these two eyeballs, because we can use different methodologies, integrate the data, and learn far more about what is important to our customers and consumers. And again, you'll see this issue of blind spots. I can't see what's happening behind me. For all I know that there is a gorilla on the stage with me, I just can't see it. And we need to keep checking to make sure that we're not missing something, because if we miss something, it could be hugely important. It could mean that we're actually getting our brand into big trouble when we think we're actually doing the right thing for it. But if you think about what we're faced with as researchers today, we have a huge range of tools, data, information that we can draw on. From big data on the left here to neuroscience on the right-hand side, where there have been some huge leaps forward made. And it's perfectly possible today with simple algorithms that pass out noise from the signal in social media and search data to understand whether your campaign is having an immediate effect on people's perceptions of the brand and the relevance to them. At the other end of the scale, We can use facial coding, for instance, to understand people's second-by-second response to a video or other stimulus that's taking place during time. And literally just by having the system monitor the way their eyebrows and their mouth moves, we can understand up to 8 basic emotions across time. But all of that is dependent on algorithms. And I love this quote because it is so true. If you torture data long enough, it will confess. And I think one of the biggest challenges we face at the moment is we, as analysts, often torture our data too much. So, for instance, I've been very intrigued to look at some of the data coming from Comscore recently with regard to programmatic advertising buying. Because there is a case of lots of promise where many advertisers are investing money in programmatic buys because they believe they're more accurately targeting their end audience. But the Comscore data suggests you're lucky if more than 50% of your target audience is actually hit by a programmatic campaign. That's a really scary thought. Why is that? Because big data is like oil. It needs to be refined to be useful. And one of the fundamental issues with the sort of data that's being used for programmatic buys, a lot of it is outdated, a lot of it is inaccurate, and a lot of it is inferred. And one of the most difficult age groups to hit with programmatic is 15 to 24-year-olds. Why? Because you can have a 15-year-old who behaves just like a grown-up. You can have a 15-year-old who believes like a 3-year-old or appears to be a 3-year-old. It's really difficult to infer from just their behavior and the content they consume what age they really are. So we need to be careful about leaving everything to algorithms. So what can we do? Know what you're looking for would be number one. We're all in the business, I believe, of driving value growth through our brands. That means we need people to choose our brand more often, pay more for the brand, which is something people don't often think about. And that means, as far as I'm concerned, building the right set of associations in relation to the brand. We have to know those in intimate detail. But one of the key things that I've seen as a result of analyzing a series of effectiveness award winners, whether that be the Effie Awards or the Cannes Creative Effectiveness Award winners that you see here, they all start with a very precise idea of how their marketing campaign is going to make more money for the brand. And I would suggest that that is one of the key things we need to try and encourage our marketing teams to do, is focus on the size of the opportunity, because it then gives you a great idea of what you need to achieve, what behavior you need to change. So for instance, point number 2 in each of these lines, and then how you're going to do that in terms of what attitudes and brand associations you need to change, shift, or improve. And that leads me on to having a clear game plan. So in the context of marketing campaigns, and I'm sorry, I did say that's my discipline, task, knowing what you're trying to achieve is mission critical, because from that, you then can understand what sort of insights you're looking for. You can understand whether you've got the right creative platform, whether you've got the right channels. I think too many brands right now are saying, what can my brand do in digital? When actually they should be asking, what can digital do for my brand? How can it help me achieve my objective? And then last but not least, creative execution, because you can have the best idea in the world, the best set of channels chosen, but if your lead executions don't deliver on their promise, you have a problem. Effective processing. I'm not going to go into this in big detail, but my suggestion would be the key thing we want to focus on is combining big data with small data. We have the opportunity today to do video calls with someone in Thailand who uses dishwashing liquid or whatever the product category is, and understand what they're saying, talk to them live, and interact with them. We can send people out with micro cameras so we can see what they see and understand their experience in intimate details. We can watch their faces and understand their emotions. But ultimately, we, as the researcher, have to be able to put ourselves in their shoes and understand how they feel, what's relevant to them, what's important to them, and what difference our brand might make in their lives. And then my favorite bit, checking for blind spots. Now, we've had a slightly boring presentation so far, so I thought I'd liven it up. I'm going to show you a video of Kantar Millward Brown's global knowledge manager, who is going to show you just how you can get blind spots. So can we play the video, please?
Hi, I'd like to show you something with a silver coin. So if I push it into the table, it appears to disappear. It doesn't really, it actually comes out here. But if I put it up there, it disappears again. Now this trick was invented by a man called Tony Slidini in the 1950s. And the curious thing is, even though the coin went up there, it comes out here, and if I put it up there, it disappears again. Slidini didn't use the phrase attentional blink, but nonetheless, that's what the trick is based on. The coin went up there, it comes out here, but if I put it up there, it disappears again. Tony Slidini's coin trick based on the attentional blink. Thank you.
You're probably going, why on earth is Nigel showing me that video? Unfortunately, you can't see where the coin goes, right? Or what he does with that coin, because your brain can't quite keep up with what he's doing and saying at the same time. And that's exactly what happens to an awful lot of our video advertising, whether it's online or on the TV. Your consumers literally cannot keep up with what's being shown and said to them. And they blink and they miss really important points. If that's your key message, you've missed something. If that's your brand, all your media money is wasted. But that's just one minor example of a blind spot. There's another sort of blind spot that comes from not having the right data sources. And one of the great things about today is we're able to integrate much more data, both attitudinal and behavioral, to understand what's going on. So here you see an example where we're looking at brand associations in the form of brand equity scores versus behavioral data from the same respondents, but measured on a panel looking at how much they paid for a brand. And to me, this is one of the key things we need to focus on as marketers. We need to boost how much people are paying for our brand and not rely on discounts simply to sell volume. As you can see from this chart, what we see is that brand-driven people, people who value brands more than others, pay more for the brands anyway, but they will pay more for high-equity brands than low-equity brands. Even the price-driven people, the people who think it's more important to get a low price, will pay more for a high-equity brand. And this is one of those things that lies behind the obvious data, because if you look at the obvious data, you will agree with the Ehrenberg Bass Institute that mental and physical availability is everything and all you need is salience. Well, unfortunately, I believe that if you try and drive penetration and salience, which is their key recommendation, on its own, you risk undermining the profit that your brand can make. They also suggest that brand love has very little to do with brand success, and yet again, by integrating, it's on that side, integrating data from panel and surveys, we can see that people who like a brand more than others are much more likely to buy it again, even when you control for the weight of purchasing in the analysis. So key takeaways. I don't know where that guy comes from. Consumer insight really depends on how you interpret the data, and it's only useful when you can actually take action from it. And if we leave action and interpretation up to our algorithms, we really risk missing some key tricks. And I think we need to use better methodologies, but use them wisely. Let's not end up in the same place as programmatic, where 50% of our consumer insight is actually incorrect or inappropriate. So let's know what we're looking for, figure it out in advance, not going on fishing trips, really feel how our customers and consumers feel, and always check for blind spots. And then hopefully we will have that clearer vision, which will lead to brand growth and hopefully profitable brand growth. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thanks. We'll watch for the blind spots then.